Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome here to McNally Robinson Booksellers, located here in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Niniwak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation, and of course, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests upon the land that was once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We are so thrilled that you could join us here this afternoon for the rescheduled celebration of the brilliant new collection of poems from Duncan Mercredi, Only the Scent of You Remained. We're so grateful to have Bay Press for publishing this volume, and of course for making this afternoon a reality, and also grateful to our friends at Plume Winnipeg for helping to co-sponsor the event. You'll be hearing from the festival director, Charlene Deal, at the close of the event, when she will have some thrilling words of signing instruction for you, and some additional comments on the event itself. But personally, after having spent an inordinate amount of time searching for Duncan's previous collections in bookstores across the city, it's a particular pleasure that the last 5 years have seen 3 publications celebrating and expanding on his work, from a Warren Carreyrou curated selected works volume from WLU Press in 2020 to 215 in 2021, published by the Manitoba Arts Council, to finally today's Only the Scent of You Remained. I could speak a little extemporaneously about this volume, but as I learned very early on doing this job, if Kate Vermette has something beautiful to say, you shut up and listen to her. So Katerina Vermette had this to say about the collection. As smooth as Leonard Cohen, as witty, gritty as Tom Waits, as heartbreaking as Rita Joe, as street as they come, this collection feels like home, like a blues song you have to stop and listen with closed eyes. He's always teaching something. You'll be hearing a little bit more from the poet himself in just a moment. After that, there'll be a conversation hosted by Ariel Gordon. And following that, if you folks have any questions, please feel free to put up your hand during the Q&A, and I'll come over to you with this microphone to make sure everyone can hear your questions as well. But for now, it's my great pleasure to introduce both of today's participants. Your host, Ariel Gordon, is a Winnipeg Treaty 1 territory-based writer, editor, and enthusiast. She is the ringleader of Rites of Spring, a National Poetry Month project with Plume Winnipeg that appears in the Winnipeg Free Press, and the poetry editor for The Goose. Her most recent books include Sightseeing, Writing Nature and Climate Change Across the Prairies, and the essay collection Fungal, Foraging in the Urban Forest. Her work has appeared recently in Best Canadian Essays 2025 and Prairie Fire's 50 over 50 special issue. She is currently serving as writer-in-residence at the Winnipeg Public Library, and her most recent publication is the epistolary dystopian YA novel, Blood Letters, created in collaboration with GMB Kamichek. Our special guest this afternoon, Duncan Mercredi, Cree, mixed, born in Mississauga, aka Grand Rapids, Manitoba, part of the Indigenous Writers Collective, storyteller, writer, traveled extensively around Turtle Island, sharing stories and poetry, not so much anymore, not much of a traveling man these days. He served as the 2nd Poet Laureate of Winnipeg, and in 2021, he received the Manitoba Award at the Manitoba Book Awards. Please give a raucous round of applause to Duncan Mercredi.
Wache, Anin, Bonjour, Sego. That's only 4 different languages I know. And telling you the truth, it's a little bit different. I try and stay away from people as much as I can, but sometimes you can't do that. And this one is this book I came from. It was a long time coming down. It was just something I wasn't completely ready for. I mean, it's what, 3 years since that one over there, but that was just a little bit of compilation, so that was fine. But the last one I had was something in 96, 97, something like that. Was the last one I did. So, and then I kept writing, but I was busy doing a lot of storytelling with schools, and then doing some traveling, which is usually a nightmare for me, because that means I have to meet more people. And so it is just, so I just but I had to write. It was something you have to, inside of you as a writer, you have to write. Whether you like it or not, you write it. Thought for a long time, what am I going to do with all this stuff? What am I going to do with all this stuff? So I sent a lot of it to a prairie fire. And all the rest of them I just sort of piled up, left in one spot, and sat up one night wondering what I'm going to do with all this stuff. And then I realized my idea was I was going to roll them all up into bundles. And I was going to leave instructions that when I finally leave this place, that they be placed on the fire, the sacred fire, and everything would be burnt. And it was just my words, I wanted to follow me. So that was the thing, that was the idea. But then this person that lives with me said it was not a very good idea. She didn't want to be the one rolling him up after I'm dead. So, well, this is failure, by the way. She's real. She's actually real. Yeah. People have always asked me, are you really married? Do you really have a wife, or you just made her up? And hey, long time. His last name is Duncan, so we kind of got something in touch. But first, I have to read something that's not in the book here. It's because of the issue that we have going on with identification. I am still a person of in between, neither this nor that, seeking a place to feel I belong, carrying bloodlines of those that were and those that weren't, hiding a believed shame, not knowing the truth lay hidden, not one of your making, staying silent lest someone call you, revealing the shade you carry is lie, deep down inside, hidden beneath years of denial, when I wasn't who I was, memories stir, seeking, hoping that I am not alive. While others try to silence the songs Lucan chanted that carry stories from somewhere long past. A fiddle opens another door, knowing I am still a person of in between, whether this nor that, seeking a place to feel I belong. I wrote that when I started realizing that I worked most of my life outside of my village. I was a lot of the only person that had a natural tan in the summertime with a group of work people I was working with. And that happened for over 27 years when I was in the blue collar world. And I learned a lot from those men, some good, some very bad. But I also realized I was losing my identity. I was becoming more of the people I worked with and who I was raised as. And it took me a long time to recover who I really am. But that meant I had to write. And the only way I knew how to do it was to tell the truth. And to tell the truth, that means I had to write the good and the bad. Because what Duncan always said when she was telling stories was that if you only tell good stories, then you're telling lies. You have to have that balance. And so I write about that stuff. I don't shy away from it. And, well, listen, I was a teenager. I did things teenagers did, maybe a little bit over the line from time to time, but I managed to survive that. Most of my friends didn't. Actually, I was delaying when I have to read or something. So this collection, I will start seeking rebirth. I try to wipe the white off me, hoping to find the shade I once was, seeking my voice, the language that raised me. Then another intruded, forgetting for a time who I was, turning my back on those that stayed behind, accepting who I had become, not who I was. I wandered into a world unlike my own, where acceptance was a conspiracy, sharing was a sin, practiced by those that stuck in the past. I am unable to erase what I left behind. My soul is scarred from what I gathered from a different path. I try to wipe the white off me, but the tentacles are buried deep. I can only scratch the surface, but my blood is red, and my voice speaks in riddles. If you ask who you are, I will answer in the language I once was. Wanneer escaped in, I don't know. Now for my city poem. I found all my gods on Main Street. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's traveled the world, and he talked about being in Egypt and seeing all those idols that they've created and stuck up there. And he said, "There's all kinds of gods out here to me." And that's when that idea popped up in my head. I found all my gods on Main Street. I still have Main Street in my blood. Memories of the strip still visible in the scars I carry. Many are faded, but where I learned them was not. Walked the strip weekend after weekend, Old Brunswick, the gathering place for many. Some ventured to find a place to ease the need to learn. Ties and dress pants mingling with blue-collar, sun-brown faces. Old Mac welcomed old-timers, still reminiscing on old wars. Head bobbing to Georgie Jones and Hank covers. Old Mac, national, the toughest on the strip. Counting coup on sidewalks. The Leland always first stop on long nights. Greeks ran the place, never inquired about IDs. Cursing the ending of the night. Not ready to put my spirit to sleep. Music drifted from the Brunswick, catching seaweed and guests sharing Evangeline's loss. Percy and Martin trading licks with Jimmy on the side. Dance floor never empty. Laughter filled the place on the street. Voices whispered the alleyways want a hidden side alleys, leaving your nightmares behind. Hurried behind. Buried behind a whale of smoke, drifting down Maiden Higgins, and the fiddle weeps as the street begins to sleep, taking the magic away. Follow me. Another voice from the past whispers. Manners happening with T and Casey. Jackson sings an old song while he wails on the harp. The ties and dress pants remained. We drifted to the Savoy. A wilder guitar-driven sound emerged, a raised dance floor filled with angry, gyrating bodies. The only sound carried from the past were broken glasses, upturned tables, and flying ashtrays. The music never stopped. Visions never wait. They move on, looking for another lost soul, hoping to keep the strip alive, offering salvation before sunrise. I found all my gods on Main Street. The sacrament they offered left me wanting more. I tried. I never stepped too far into the safety of the darkness. The darkness held. I found all my gods on Main Street. Don't know when they left or why. Actually, first time I've seen this book. I haven't got a clue what the order is here. So, but I wanted to share something else here. And let's see now. When you're walking in two worlds. When you walk in two worlds, you walk alone. stranger to strangers, each wondering where you belong. When you walk in two worlds, your voice sounds unfamiliar, trying to decipher intentions, ignoring the obvious. When you walk in two worlds, the path is divided, never meeting, unable to find the connection. When you walk in two worlds, your dreams intrude into others, unable to understand your visions, you become isolated. When you walk in two worlds, seeking acceptance who you are, not who they think you are. When you walk in two worlds, languages collide, not knowing the meaning, gestures seem dangerous. When you walk in two worlds, we forget who we are, forgetting that when we met, we clasped hands in friendship. When we walked in two worlds, we walked side by side. I was really going to say something here, but this is the one. This is a dad talking to his son, and the son talking back. Sky and lake. At one time, I could reach over and touch the sky with my fingertips. Dad, what did you see in the water? Child, the sky, clouds, a bird. Dad, look deeper. Child, I see the bottom of the lake, a fish, another one. I can't touch the bottom. Years after the stop singing. At one time, I could reach over and touch the sky with my fingertips. Child, what do you see in the water? Dad, algae, dark. Child, look deeper. Dad, my eyes would hurt. Child, why? Dad, algae burns. Child, what did you see when you were young? Dad, the sky. I could see the sky at one time. I could reach over and touch the sky with my fingertips. Child, I wish. I don't even know exactly how long I'm supposed to be up here, so I'm gonna give you a couple more. I wanted to children. The child laughs. We sit in silence. Listen to the age of the place where we are, each creak, each whisper the walls make, voice walks by outside, the child laughs. We sit in silence, watching in fear, unable to turn the sound off, the visions of chaos, the words full of hate fill the screen. We sit in silence, ignore the city, the cries, unable to turn our face away. We watch, we listen. Even if the sound turned off, we still hear the division. You are them, we are you, a different shade of skin. We sit in silence, hoping it's all a dream, that when we wake, all we will see is sunshine. All we will feel is warmth. All we will hear is the sound of a child laughing. Another joins. We hope and dream that they are laughing together. We'll leave that one for last. When they set the birds free. When they finally set the birds free, some found they could no longer fly. They walked in unfamiliar paths. Everything they had been taught had been erased, their past replaced by lies, their drum replaced by rosaries, their beliefs paganized. When they finally set the birds free, some found they could no longer fly. Their wings had been clipped. Even prayers could not retrieve what was lost. They searched and searched for that voice, one that echoed from the past. Biggie way, Biggie way. Misunderstood its meaning and took the other road. When they finally set the birds free, some found they could no longer fly. Now, I wrote this for a niece of mine. She's been battling addictions for years. And so she said, I want you to write a poem for me. I want you to write a poem for me. Child of dreams. She looks inside, answers, stays hidden. When wondering if what she's seeking has always been there, just below the surface, disguised as happiness. Her memory is full of tears, always wondering, where do I belong? Seeking comfort in sadness, asking if giving love not return is the only wanting a place to belong. Walking ahead of her, laughter and tears mixed in with words whispered, I love you, mommy. She looks inside, realizing the answer was always there. She only covered it with a familiar scent, a scent carried by the only one who understood, accepted her for who she was, a child of dreams. She shared with him alone. She watched him play solitaire. My uncle, Isidore, always sat by the window in the kitchen, and he'd watch people go by. And while he was watching people go by, he'd play solitaire. I want to introduce you to two people, and then I will read the last piece after that. Mom and Dad Waltz. I've been trying to find the words to create balance, negative and positive, so I can move on so I can move on. Not to put the truth behind me, to save it, hold it close, share it so it doesn't collect dust and then be forgotten. It needs balance though. Without balance, we will never achieve peace within ourselves. I will tell you a story of two people who found themselves after seeking the answer to why. She was 8 when she left the only home she knew. 16 when she was given the freedom to leave a place she couldn't call home. One place she never visited again. Another she rarely returned to except for visits. The closest she came to the place where she was born was the Pa, the place where she boarded a train with her father, brother, and little sister to be placed in a foreign place, leaving behind her identity, her language, not knowing it'd be up to her to not now that her only purpose in life was to keep her sister safe. And she did. She cleaned houses, she studied, she in time became the big sister to many other like her little sister. She shared the food she would be given at the houses she cleaned, hiding the food that it couldn't be confiscated. And her punishment would be a removal from the only place she found some respite. It would be 4 years before she was allowed to go home for the summer. And after going back to Brandon, another 4 years would pass before she left to settle in Nepal. He joined the army in Nepal. Now as a Canadian, he wasn't. He had no identity, but he volunteered. Now as a proud patriot, he did it to find adventure. Born in Mississippi to a country-born mother and a Métis father, he rarely traveled too far from home, his home community. I imagine he had a restless spirit within him, and that is why he joined the army. He was shipped out by train to Halifax and then shipped to England to take further training the year 1943. October 1944, he was wounded in Belgium. He spent the rest of the war in England and in Scotland to recover from his wounds. Sometime after the war, he returned to Canada, still not recognized as a Canadian. He spent some time in Winnipeg before being shipped to the pod to continue the rehabbing. It was where they met these two mismatched lovers who carried their ghosts with them, the ghosts that haunted them as long as I knew them, yet didn't know them. They kept those ghosts to themselves, and yet as different as they were, there were occasions, the love story they had for each other, and the love they had for each other would surface between the nightmares and isolation they created for themselves to keep their sanity. They found a time to laugh. We never got to hear all the stories they kept to themselves, why he'd yell out names of people we didn't know as he slept, or why he'd suddenly disappear for days to be alone, or why our mother would become silent for days, sitting alone at night, unable to hold her children for comfort. We didn't know. This we did know. We had an old turntable. Remember the old ones? You had to crank the handle, make it turn. We kept it upstairs. We'd take it out and play the old 78 RPM records. Every so often, my mother and father would join us. They'd make a request, the song they always danced to, holding each other close. We'd crank up that old turntable and put Lefty Frizzell's Mom and Dad waltz on. And they'd waltz, not just once, over and over, holding each other close. I often wonder if it was to keep the ghosts at bay, it didn't matter to us. My little brother and sister, it felt good. We knew for a little while the house would be full of laughter. I don't, it's, I don't know what I'm trying to say, tell you the truth. It's the first time I read that book, that story in quite a while. I was going to do another one here. I'm trying to find one I wanted to read. I wanted to read something from my grandmother, my Newcomb. Maybe I should just look at the titles here. Well, this one, I'll read about my daughter. Just a very short piece. My oldest daughter, we used to go and visit Frida's mom and auntie in the West End. And her auntie watched me and my daughter walking down the street at the same time. And her auntie said, she walks like her dad. Which means she walks the strut. She walks like her dad, strutting. They chuckle when we walk together. She never walks with her head down. She is her grandmother and her great grandmother to turn her blood. I didn't need to teach her. She knew. Thank you very much.
right. Thank you, Duncan. That was
Okay.
great.
Thank you.
We have another round of applause to the most excellent.
I can say this though.
Hmm.
They actually make these chairs to make us short people feel. You know, we have to climb these chairs, you know. So, but what I was gonna tell you is just a little story before we get started here was, and all you have to say is yeah, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Every time I stop, you say, and there's just the end. Where do you come from?
Where do you come from?
You come from. I'm asking you the question.
Oh, you're asking me the question where I come from.
I say you're supposed to over there.
Yeah.
Just answer whatever you want to say. Okay, could be one or two lines. Nothing long. Okay. This is a two Métis people visiting. She's an old man too, by the way. Okay. Where are you coming from?
Over there.
Tandy, where?
Over there.
Tantemana. Oh, say. Where are you going to do a visit?
Over there.
Then why did you stop here?
Because.
Good answer. Have some tea?
Yeah, always tea.
The pot's right over there. Tea's over there. Milk and sugar over there. Help yourself. Didn't make panic today. Didn't know I was going to have a visitor.
Jam?
Oh, you can have a jam, but there's no
There's no manic and no, there's jam but no manic.
That's right. Yeah. And then the house would go silent. And that is a Métis visit. So we get lots of that. Those Grand Rapids people would drop by and they would just sit there. Sit. Good. And I'd sit and wait for them to talk. And they wouldn't talk, so I'd leave. And I'd come back in there just babbling away. And then I realized I wasn't allowed to hear what they were talking about. So we probably had to do with a rumor, or some guy was doing something he wasn't doing with somebody else's wife. Those are the ones I wanted to hear about. Right, talking, I go.
Okay, so I like the strut that we just heard about. How you walk, you strut.
Yeah.
But I know you're a great walker. How does that practice influence your poetry? Do you write while you walk? Do you compose while you walk?
I composed while I walk in my head. I used to carry a little book around with me, but you get a lot of weird looks when you walk your book around, especially you're a guy, right? And you're scratching stuff around people. But this comes back to my blue collar days when I was a young man. I spent 4 years in bush camps, working bush camps, and so you carry a little book around with you to just keep track of stuff. And the men always asked me when I was writing.
Are you writing about me, Duncan? Are you writing about me?
Yeah, write about, you know.
Yeah.
And you realize real quickly, you don't tell them you write poetry. Never tell blue collar guys that you write poetry. Because right away they've got that limp wrist look at their right. And so it was just, so nowadays when I walk up, the high lines would come in my head and I'll go back, and if I remember them, I'll put them down and leave them sit for a while, and I'll finish what I'm trying to say after that. So.
Does your storytelling experience help you to memorize the lines while you walk? Because I can't remember, like I can sometimes do lines while I walk, but then they mostly disappear. But you have all that great storytelling experience, so like you've trained yourself.
No.
No.
Oh, that's not really happened. As a boy, I spent a lot of my time with my cuckoo, and when visitors would come over to the house, she'd come and ask me to sit with them, and they would tell stories. And my idea was to remember the stories that they told, and so you'd listen to them. But it wouldn't be right away. She would wait for a couple of weeks or maybe 3 weeks, and she would come and sit beside me. And so I want you to tell me a story that you heard when those people were here. And so you'd start telling the story. And as she listened, she would count. No, so counting Cree, because she never spoke English in her life, was that she would say piak, 1, and then continue on, niso, 2, and then go on, nisto, 3, and then go on. And when she would say neo, 4, she would say stop. You made 4 mistakes. You made 4 mistakes in that story. Which is the worst thing you can do when you're 5, 6 years old, because that means you have to do your brother's chores. And your older brother, it's like just something that you didn't want to do. You didn't want to cut wood, you didn't want to go get water, you didn't want to empty out the dirty water from washing. And the last thing you didn't want to do was take a chamber pot out, because it was upstairs. And the chamber pot was just a 5-gallon pail that everybody used. And you'd have to carry it downstairs. And you'd leave a trail behind you. And some of that trail would be on your pants. You'd take it out the outhouse, empty it out, wash it out, bring it back in. Then you were allowed to change your clothes. Didn't end there, you had to wash your own clothes. So you learn very quickly that to listen as carefully as you can, because you were being trained to be a storyteller, not knowing when you're being trained to be a storyteller. It just happened. And so all the stories that came up come from that area. So it's not that hard.
So how did Matt at Bay Press convince you to take the bundles that your wife convinced you not to send up in the sacred fire? How did he convince you to take those bundles of poems and turn them into this book?
It was your fault.
It was my fault.
Because I was talking about publisher that would take a look at my work, and you said at Bay Press to me, and so they're looking for other writers, and so that's when I sent that to them, and I totally forgot about it for a couple of months, and then Matt finally messaged me and said they were going to publish your work. So.
And how many poems are in those bundles? Do you know?
No idea. Not a clue. There's 2 boxes that are almost full, and there's some scattered all over the floor, which the little beast likes to scatter a little bit more. Guess what a little beast is? Just this little dog that we have. And so there's tons, but a lot of it's my cousin you asked about if this was the last book, and I said, well, I think I have one more, and this just covers a portion of what I've gone through as a boy to a child and growing up in Winnipeg, after leaving the bush camps when my second daughter was going to be born. And there's blanks in this book that have to be filled. And so that's where all this other work is going to be coming into. And it's going to be a combination of little stories, like just little stories about sitting with my grandmother, listening to the stories, the troubles we got into as boys, and then now the change that happened when Hydro got there, the damage that it did to the environment, and also the environment of the people, and then moves on to the bush camp years. Then the last stories will be about the city itself. And, people keep asking me about the city's red, if it's going to be there. It's going to be the finish of the city's red poem at Long Peace will be the end of that one. So that's the plan. But you never know what the road is going to turn. Something may change again.
Do you have a literary executor?
I haven't even got a clue what that means.
It means someone that if the road goes off the road, if you have someone that can make sure that your work, is preserved and published, do you know what I mean? You could make Rosanna Deerchild do it.
No, no, I don't know. The plan is still to do the same thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It's bundle them up.
Yes, that's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan.
To burn.
To burn, right?
Yeah.
But But I don't know if I trust my family to do that. So they might just gather up and throw them to university. I don't know because they ask me for that stuff too.
So I wanted to say, this book, as you said, lives in those moments in between, and it's steeped in grief and loss, and there's ghosts and dreams that you walk in and out of, but the poems also reach for the stars, and they dwell in community and family. How do you achieve this balance?
That's a hard question to answer.
Duncan Mercredi is stumped. Does that happen?
Well, I guess it was. I keep going back to my grandmother. I keep going back to her because the story she told would cover all of what they cover, except for the ones in the city. Because she never left Grand Rapids except to go Selkirk every once in a while because she had family there too. But it covered that area. She always asked me to look at the stars to see if I could never find the seven sisters. And I count. They said there's only 6 of them there. And says, well, there's one that's shy that never shows up unless the night is perfect. So you'll see it. And when you see it, you know what I'm talking about. And it took me a long time to actually find the 7th sister. So, and then I said, well, what's so important from that? To know that, because that's where you come from. That's where you come from. And so that was, so I still look every so often when I'm walking with the dog, I'll point out plants out there as we walk. I don't think she'll remember. She just wants to poop and pee, that's all she wants to do. So.
For me, what makes a Duncan Mercredi poem is the truth-telling, the tenderness, and the contrariness. You always say no to everything the first time you're asked. You always are like, no, go away. This was good, but go away for a while.
Yeah.
And yet you're a performer. You're a natural performer. How and why? That's my question.
Doctor in music over there asked me the same question when I first started working with him. And I told him I put on a mask. I put on an invisible mask when I go in. Because that's the only way I can do it. I can't do it if I don't do it that way. So I find something from the back in my past and say, okay, this is a good time to put the mask on. So the mask speaks for me. And so I feel more comfortable doing it that way than that way to come right out. And I don't know what the natural part is.
Because right now you're elder in residence at the library at U of M. And before that, you were Poet Laureate, named the Poet Laureate in 2021. So those are some pretty big public roles. And I'm so glad you're doing them. And I know everyone else is so glad you're doing them. But that's a lot of being out in the world.
It's a big mask. And I can't stand the word elder. I'm old. I'm old, that's it. Elders are supposed to know everything. I don't. I can't sit there and say I know everything about Indigenous ways of living. I don't. I don't know all the ways about the Métis living. I don't. I only have small grains of each part of who I am. And that I can share. I'm not going to sit up there and talk to the students and just bullshit them. No. And at least I hope they know I'm bullshitting. And so it's just so I'm not comfortable with that. And the only reason I took that, well, there was 2 reasons that I took that job at the University of Manitoba. was Kate recommended me. And I'm still seeking revenge. And but also it was at the it came just at the right time because my daughter informed us that she had cancer, breast cancer, and she had to leave her job. And so she got a daughter in University of British Columbia, and trying to figure out how was she going to make it out there. No, without the support. I mean, she's got support from one of the First Nations, but not to cover everything. And she'd be looking after 3 other kids. She's got her younger son and the 2 nieces, a niece and a nephew that she's looking after. And how was she gonna survive with that besides her daughter over there? So I realized, well, I have to take this to help her pay for her travel where she is right now. She can't just leave. It'll be just too much. I would never go back. So that's the reason why I'm there. And I'm not an elder. So they said, I'm a knowledge keeper. She said, yeah, it works a little bit. But I'm more of a knowledge seeker. That's what I am. I'm not a knowledge seeker. I learn from everybody. I learn from the people I work with. I learn from the people I've woke up in jail with. I worked with all different races in my life, and I always ask them, why here? You know, why Winnipeg? And it's all you good things about it. But I'm always so curious about other people. What is their culture? What their songs, their stories? And I want to know that. That's what I want to know. So I'm still seeking that knowledge from them, how they view the world. So.
Now, this is your 7th book. What have you learned about your writing since Spear of the Wolf came out in 1991, which is, 34 years ago?
What have I learned? I should have kept my mouth shut. Because I didn't know that it involved this.
This in particular, or all of them?
All of this.
Not this conversation specifically.
The invitation to go tell stories in Northwest Territories and Yukon Territories, BC, Alberta, which I like to call the United States of Alberta now, Saskatchewan, and all these places I've gone to. And so it's been hard. I mean, but again, I'll go back to my wife Newcomb. I'll always used to say that if they ask nicely, you can't say no. So most times they ask nicely, so I can't say no. So she just wouldn't leave me alone, that old lady. So that's just something
Okay, that seems like a good point to ask if any of you have questions. I know there's at least one out there. Oh.
Hello, I'm so honored to be here and to listen today. I'm always inspired by listening to you. I'm just wondering the difference between working with students and with adults, if you can speak to that.
Depending on the age. The little ones I just tell usually legends and little stories I made up that I used to tell my daughters when they were young. Once they get to grade 7 and all that, nothing is sacred. Nothing is sacred. I talk about everything. I talk about my early life when I was drinking when I was 13 years old. All of that is covered in there because they can't. Like I say, you have to have that balance. You know, when you're working with young students early in the first half of the day, telling them stories to make them laugh and to make them think, and you go into that second half, and you try to tell them the truth. What happened to Grand Rapids, what happened to the village of Grand Rapids, what happened to the people in Grand Rapids. And so I have to tell them that part of who I am too, because those two lives, the way it was before Manitoba Hydro and after Hydro, basically got together. And that's who I became. And so they have to know that I just can't say it. I can't tell them the bad stuff.
And then working with adults, is that like the same again?
Again, I mean, so I think it's always a bit of shock to them when I tell them the truth, you know? I mean, we're not gonna be just sit there and just tell them, well, this is it, this is the way it is, and I'm not telling them what happened. You know, I lost a lot of friends in jail, a lot of friends on the streets, and they didn't die, just natural causes, you know, and it all happened fast from going from a very small village to people, almost 4,000 people, and the changes that happened, and some of us managed to survive, and I tell people that, and I tell the students, and I tell the adults, you know, when I was a boy, a young man, and I was going to get into all these troubles, and the troubles I got into as a young man, I asked them years and years later, why did they let me do that? You know, why did they let me just go my own way without control? And my mother said, because I had an older brother, a younger brother, and 5 young sisters, and their answer at the time was, it was better to lose one than all of them. And so that was me. They were willing to sacrifice one child to keep the rest safe. In realizing I knew about surviving. I picked the right fence.
Any other questions?
I probably don't need that. Okay. I'm wondering, because you talk about the different bits of your life, places you've been and who you are. I look at your name, your last name, your uncle Isidore, I hear this, and I'm wondering, where do you connect to that little bit of what's tucked in there of French? Like I've never heard you actually talk about that, just wondering.
The first thing I was taught when I started doing storytelling from my grandmother was you tell everybody who you are. Was your father and your mother's side. My mother was a full-blood Cree from Nelson House. My grandmother, my father on my father's side was French, Irish, Scottish, and all of that is there. And she goes, you have to tell people your bloodline, because you don't have just the one bloodline. And so people have to know who you are. By just telling them, well, I'm Cree, doesn't tell them who you are, because Cree is our language, but that doesn't identify us as people. So it was I guess we'll watch that you have a life besides just this little village I was in, and she always said things are going to change. She knew changes were happening. And says, I won't be around much longer, so you can't forget what you have here. So but then she always said, you always tell the bad stuff too. So.
We have time for one more question right over here.
Duncan, I was just wondering, when you write about the hard stuff, like the addiction in the family and whatnot, do you go at it all at once, or do you just do a little bit of healing, a little bit of TLC, or like you know, how does one approach the writing the really hard stuff, I guess is what I'm asking.
With your eyes wide open. Once you start, you can't stop. Because if you stop, then you hesitate. Once you hesitate, you won't finish. You have to write it down right away. That's the way it works. I'm not sure how other people do it. That's the way I do it. I just can't just sit back and say, well, I'll leave it until later. You know damn well you're not going to go back to it.
Duncan, can you finish this off with one more poem?
Okay.
Just one. I'm holding you
All
one.
right. Okay, all right.
I know you're gonna get excited. You'll be like, oh, and also this one.
I will say this, we had I had a little chapbook I wrote that I sent to a doctor in music. Took task with me long ago. And so he contacted me again, and we think we might be working together on putting music to that scope, that little booklet. So we hope it comes through anyway, because I was thinking about that lately, and I figured, well, that might be a good one to do. Now, what I'm going to read to you is the title of the book, and when Matt said that they were going to publish this book, he had a different interpretation of what I wrote in that piece. But I guess it's the same thing. I mean, everybody finds something different in the piece that you write. We met when we were both looking for someone on a dark street, not knowing where we were. A quick glance, a smile returned, turning back at the corner. I held out my hand, you accepted the offer. A shy smile, soft hello, my name is Night. We spoke in the shadows, hidden from sight. Live far? No, just around the corner. No words, just quick glances. I brushed my fingers across your lips. Are you sure? You nodded. Call me Dawn. Later in the quiet of my room, soft sounds by Leonard on vinyl. We caressed what we could see. The music faded as we drifted. I grabbed your hand. I kissed your fingertips. Don't, you whispered. Let's embrace this moment. I dreamt I was floating on a sea of clouds. When I woke just after dawn, you were gone. To know the scent of you remained.
I have the great fortune of the final thank you here. Duncan, for these exquisite poems, for saying yes when someone asks you nicely, for not sending all these poems up in smoke, but letting us hold them and carry them. A huge thanks from all of us here, because this voice is a voice that we all want to carry with us. I'm glad that you put your mask on today. I'm glad that that mask comes out and lets us hear your stories. I know we were just talking before this event about how many people who perform are introverted and how often we do have to put a surface on so that we can go into public. It's exquisite to hear these poems, hear your stories, and I think we should rename that role Knowledge Seeker in Residence. Don't you think? I think it'd be a good idea. Lovely conversation. Thank you both. And let's do an honor to this conversation. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Charlene Deal, and I'm at the helm of Plume Winnipeg. And we had planned to host this big event during the festival. And I'm so happy that we were able to kind of come back together before the
fall ends and while the appetite for this beautiful book is still present, I would like to just take a moment to acknowledge where we are here, this extraordinary place we get to gather where people like Duncan can share their stories and their poems, and where we can gather and listen. And Duncan, I hope you noticed the rapt attention as you were reading. Everyone in this room is holding your voice, and this beautiful place we gather gives us a chance to be together in really important ways. So a big thank you to McNally Robinson and to the ogre John who hides behind here and makes everything work. It's extraordinary. No, he's too shy. He'll hide back there, but I don't think there's anybody in the country who organizes more things more gracefully with so much pleasantness. I know he's probably blushing, but it's really amazing to work with him. And I've talked to publishers from all across the country who's like, oh, you live in the city with McNally Robinson and John? I was like, yes, about in that order.
We owe you $10, Shirley.
Just need some money. My other job up here is to explain the signing procedure, which is not very complicated. Here's how it works. Duncan gets out of his chair and he goes over to this chair over here. And everyone gets in a line and you pick up a book and Duncan signs it. You have a little chat. He'll tell you 14 stories and then you head out and the next person shows up. I think it works something like that. And the only real rule is that you have to pay for the book before you leave the store. It's pretty simple. One more big round of applause, please, for Duncan Mercredi.